Good evening, everyone, and welcome back for episode number 17. It's crazy to even say that of UBT Live. I am Roger Phipps, and I am your man for small business, legal, medical, and higher education marketing, any kind of video needs you need, and anything in between. I'm also your personal business and life coach. And excited to be here for another week. This week, we'll be talking about 5 barriers to entrepreneurship. And before we start, I'm going to bring my good buddy and fellow UBT Liver, Josh Lazar, into the stream. What's up, Josh? Welcome to the stream.
Hello, everyone watching live and listening later.
That's a good way to put that. I hadn't even thought about that. That's awesome.
So write that down. That'll be my intro.
I like it. All right. So for this week, we're going to be talking about 5 barriers to entrepreneurship. It's just the two of us from the looks of things, but that's okay. We've both got plenty of things to say about these things. You, because you're going through it. Me, because I've been through it. And, you know, I help other people through it. So I'm excited to talk about this topic because it's something that pretty much everybody goes through. And the first topic in that grouping is going to be a lack of capacity and how to overcome it. So, you know, from lack of capacity, let's kind of talk a little bit about what that means. So lack of capacity means a couple of things. One, it means, do you have the capacity to deliver on your business to start? And then once you've got it started, in order to grow. So like all of us reach this point where hopefully you're successful. You started with whatever your business plan was at the beginning, and now it's time to grow, and it's time to, you know, further develop your product line, or, you know, you've gotten so many customers because you're so great at marketing that you don't have the capacity. So there's the capacity when it comes to time. There's the capacity when it comes to production. There's a capacity when it comes to operations. Do you have the right tools and processes to deliver for your clients? Because that evolves and changes. And then from the get-go, do you have the capacity, from a cash flow perspective to continue to grow as well? So, Josh, that was a lot. There's a lot of different capacities there. Why don't you share a little bit about your story with your business and how, which ones you ran into and kind of how you've overcome them?
Sure. So if you are a first-time listener to the stream and UBT Live, I started my business full-fledged, full-time, doing this in about February this year. It was a LLC that I had for a while, and I was doing some consulting things on the weekends and nights outside of normal work hours, and eventually decided to build it myself and build it up to more than just that. So when it comes to lack of capacity, I've seen this in different ways from beginning to end. So at the beginning, I didn't have the capacity to do it full time, right? I had to make some strategic decisions to be able to be the chief everything officer, which is the nickname of the CEO that I give myself, and other people might appreciate if you start your own business in this type of way. So at first, and we're going to talk about marketing, some other things later, but at first, the capacity was, I don't have any clients, right? So I had tons of capacity for marketing and business development and all of those things, but I needed to get clients and funds flowing through the door. So that was the beginning. So lots of capacity in biz dev and marketing and getting the name out there. And then I started getting clients, and relatively quickly. Then the other capacity issues happened. So great case in point. Right now, I have about 4 to 5 clients I'm working with. I can't do it alone, and I don't, because I have multiple people that work with me at Tech Think Tank to fulfill all these contracts and serve these clients. So I went from needing just me and being solopreneur to needing more than me. And that started growing. You know, I have a couple of people now. It's not just me. It's not just us. It's a group. And so that's was a problem because I had so many clients and I could fill all the time and I could serve them all well, but I couldn't then do business development and do marketing and do bank reconciliations and do accounting and do AP and I couldn't do it all. I couldn't do everything of the everything officer. So what that lack of capacity of doing everything and trying to do it all myself was a problem. And I'm in the middle of overcoming it, but the first thing I did was find others that could provide the services that I could bring in the business and pass off to. So that was part of the how I overcame it, and I'm still working on some of those things. When it comes to, so that was the lack of capacity there. Now I'm at the point where there are enough clients coming to me, or potential clients or leads, and there's enough work to be done that I'm at the point where I'm looking into virtual assistants or things like that to kind of be sort of project management, sort of administrative assistance, like a mix of everything. So that's kind of where I'm at now, because if I'm doing all of the administrative work and I'm doing all of the get the sales work and I'm doing all of the fulfill the contracts work, at some point there's only so much of me. So that's kind of where my capacity issues are right now. It used to be I didn't have enough work, so I had all this wonderful time to biz dev and market and all that. Now I get all the work. Now, okay, I need to serve the clients to serve them well, and so far feedback is that's happening. But where does biz dev go? Okay, so now I now bring in some capacity, some people to help with that. Okay, now we have this group of people, and more people are coming to us. Now we have all of this kind of operational administrative stuff. That's where the overflow is happening. And so far, overcoming it has been scaling up with some personnel, some independent contractors, and hopefully getting enough in to continue that process. So that's kind of been where my experience has been the last 6, 7 months. And it's a grind. I mean, it really depends on what you've done on the before you get into business. Like there was someone who's pretty well known in the business development area, very good at email marketing and those things. Has keynoted at sales kickoffs or SCOs, and they decided to go off on their own. I was reading through this on LinkedIn, and she's basically put it out there like, I'm getting so many people coming to me. I have the ability to say no, but that doesn't happen because that capacity wasn't there. That person is purposely saying no and making sure their path forward is what they want to be. So they could scale a capacity, but they want to be very specific on how they continue their brand and their growth. And that's a great thing to have. But there was years and years, if not a decade, of brand building, marketing, and other things and other roles that led to something like that. So we might not get into how you spin up the business and how you get to the point where capacity is in the niche.
So
Yeah.
Josh, so a few things. We will
Sure.
be talking about strategic planning and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So, but at the very beginning of a business, so you've kind of touched on how your path has been.
Sure.
But the question is, from a capacity standpoint, like how do you set that up, right? So if I'm starting a business, the first thing I want to do is make sure that I have a strategic plan. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But once I have that strategic plan, you should have a few scenarios built out, right? So like, okay, once I hit this target revenue goal or this many clients, then I need to engage with gaining more capacity, whether that be from a people perspective or otherwise. Now, sometimes you reach a capacity with performance, but you don't quite have enough money to invest in either people or technology or process or whatever to hit the next level. So you kind of get stuck on this cliff, right? And so when it comes to that, one of the things that you also need to be thinking about is how you're going to garner additional income or revenue or whatever, or capital for you to be able to reinvest into that business. Because the worst thing you can do is stop your forward momentum and kind of get stuck, because any additional capacity that you bring in, you end up trying to shoulder that load yourself, and then you're stopping your business from moving forward.
Yeah.
So, when you're thinking about that, there's different ways to do that. There are non-traditional, you've got your traditional financial institutions that are doing SBA lending and stuff like that. And you should make sure that you have a good relationship with a lender as your primary business, where you flow your business proceeds through. However, there are also several non-traditional lenders that are just set up for business lending that don't require what the SBA does. However, typically that does include a personal guarantee. So if you've got poor credit, you may have lots of cash flow, but if you've got poor credit, sometimes that gets in your way. If you've got the cash flow, if you've got the revenue coming in, then those non-traditional means are a way of accessing that cash based on what your cash flow is coming into the business, right? So in addition to that, there are companies out there that will help you build your business credit so that hopefully after a year or so, you don't need a personal guarantee. And those are things that you need to be thinking about at the very beginning of your business. Or if you've already started your business, start planning for growth now by looking at these different things so that you have the capital available so you can continue to grow. Because if you get stuck in that hamster wheel, it's very hard to get out of it, right? So that's one thing. From a roles perspective, in an ideal situation, part of that strategic plan is you understand what roles you're going to need at each group or stage of your business, right? Are you going to need someone to handle the phones? Are you going to need salespeople? Are you going to need people who are delivering on your product, whatever that is, right? When are you going to need someone to project manage for you? All of these different things. Those are things that you should be figuring out up front. Now, for you, it sounds like you have a key focus on some areas that you kind of want to hold close to the vest, but eventually that time's going to run out for you as well, and you're going to have to start distributing that to some other people that are not profit centers, that are cost centers, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to have profit centers and cost centers. You have to spend money to make money, and that requires cost centers. And when you get to that critical mass, the question is how much is your time worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's all right, your capacity to grow, but also the capacity that you currently have to produce, right? Are you spending twice as much salary because it's your salary that's producing that versus someone else's who's as much cheaper? You could be using your time to equate to more production at a dollar value that's higher than what you're offering today. So those are all those capacity constraints, and time is certainly one of them, right? We've talked about making sure that you carve out enough time to recharge, because if you don't, you're not going to be good to anybody long term.
Yeah.
Making sure you have the capacity for capital, however you're going to do that. Making sure you have the capacity from a people perspective to deliver on your promises, right? But that when you do that, it's really like an accordion, right? Because you're going to have to produce enough revenue, produce enough things to generate enough revenue to be able to make it to that next level. Now, there's two ways to deal with that. Either you invest in a 1099 employee that helps you on a one-for-one basis, or you stretch your current employee to the point to where they're doing basically an employee and a half's job before you hire that next person. I would not recommend going that strategy if the 1099 employee is an option. Help them help you get over that hump in the interim. Yes, you're going to lose some time on spinning them up. And if you're not hiring them full-time long-term, yes, you lose that time, but it's still better than running your employees ragged, because they will leave you and you will lose those employees. The next one on the list is the lack of risk-taking capacity. Now, this is interesting. What do I mean by risk-taking capacity? Well, there's a few ways, right? If you're running on cash flow and you're running month to month and you don't have any reserves and or you don't have any way to get additional capital, you cannot take any risk, right? And in business, you have to be able to take risk. If you have not positioned yourself to take risk, then you will not grow and you will not succeed, because something inevitably will happen that will go sideways and you'll be out of business very quickly. So making sure that you've built that capital up front, so you've got some reserves in the bank, right? Because most businesses are not going to make money, or they're not going to be profitable for 6 months to a year. So make sure that you have those reserves in the background, not only for you personally, but also for the business, so that you can continue to grow along that alignment. The other part is you. Some people are really, really risk averse. And folks, it's good to be careful with the risk you're taking, but you're going to have to take some risk. You already took a risk by going out on your own as an entrepreneur. My favorite saying, and you've heard me say this all along, right, is you're jumping off the cliff without a parachute and building it on the way down. That's my favorite saying about that, because I really do truly think it's indicative of an entrepreneur's experience. However, at the same time, that risk doesn't stop once you jump off the cliff. In order for you to build that parachute on the way down, you're going to have to continue to take risks. You're going to have to be able to pivot. Now, don't bet the farm. We don't want you to be a gambler or gambling addict, right? We don't want you to be that guy or girl. What we do want you to be is someone who understands that, understanding the risk that you take. If you have an accounting person with you, you've gotten to the point where you've got an accounting department, right? Understand what your break even analysis is. If you know what an IRR is, understand what that IRR is. And really, somewhere around 78 to 80% on your financial model of you making revenue back on that particular risk is what you should be considering before you take it. Now, sometimes the market does that for you. But if you do not have the capacity to either gain capital or have it squirreled away, then you're going to miss out on that. So as an entrepreneur, it's important to have a plan for capital that you have on your own, or capital that you can obtain, whether that be from an investor group or something like that. Josh, what are your thoughts on that?
So risk taking is important. It just is. And if you either let me just use my own experiences. It was a lot easier for me to start a side business on the weekends, at night, all remote, when I had a full-time job. And you can look me up. My salary was public. It was a six-figure job. That makes things a lot less risky. When you don't have a full-time job and you are not, and your business is everything, there's one or two things that can happen. Your risk taking, the risk taking capacity can diminish because you need to do whatever you need to do to keep whatever is going, depending on your life situation, or it can heighten and everything is risky. You attack absolutely everything, and you take some moonshots if you have the time, personal time and capacity, if you're building something yourself, or if you have the capital that's coming in or from third parties or other resources like SBA loans, things you alluded to. So to me, in my experience, it is a lot riskier to do this without a huge runway like I'm doing it, to do this bootstrapped like I'm doing it, and to take risks. But my experiences, I've done well enough where I'm taking some of these funds and I'm redeploying them to other things, which I'm hoping will be the moonshots or the more risky things. So it really depends. You hit it on the head. There's two levels of risk. Your personal level of risk, right? I am not the most risk taking person. I love playing Texas Hold'em, but I've won enough where I'm the person that goes up 400, $600, and I walk away after giving a little bit back to the table. I'm not staying there for another like 2 or 3 hours to donkey my way out of what I made. That's how I roll. But with business, to me, what I'm trying to do is accelerate my potential retirement. And I don't mean retirement as in I'm not doing anything. Retirement as in I don't need to work for money anymore. I get to choose what I do. So in that capacity, in my mind, that's the risk taking capacity that I'm now doing in business that I probably wouldn't do in my personal life, because there's a goal to it. So it is definitely a barrier to entrepreneurship if you don't have any ability to take risks, because the no risk, no reward when it comes to business is absolutely true. So to me, my experiences, I I am more risk taking in business than I am personally, because that outcome could be amazing. So that's been my experiences, and I will say, from anyone who's thinking about building a business, or anyone who's on the edge of that, if you that's why you hear these side hustles have become more of a thing. Sometimes it's because you need two jobs to survive, right? I've been there. I've probably worked 2 to 3 jobs since I've been 17, 18. But that if you try to build something while you're working somewhere else and you do both well, you're de-risking one, and you're increasing your risk taking capacity, in my opinion, when you go that route. So I think
So
it
I'll say this though, you're taking a risk by not putting your full
well,
foot
you're full.
forward into the business side as
Oh,
well, right?
I
So
agree.
you need to take that risk to be able to do that.
And sometimes you just jump off the cliff, like you said, and sometimes you might want to hedge your bets a little bit. Again, past 3 years of business, I've been profitable. It hasn't been a lot, but I'm probably going to go from 5 to 6 figures of business when I actually did it full time, and it wasn't just this 1 or 2 projects I would pick up. When you really get into it, and you know what your market is, or you've already built out some things, or you know where your focus is going, or you're well known in a certain area, you're right. It it accelerate, like, I basically went from a job to no job, and then full on with quote the side hustle as full time, and it worked really, really, really well, and I love it. And I think a lot of people can do that, but you have to put your all into it. And honestly, we're going to talk about two more things in this conversation that I had to learn quickly in order to that not be like oh, this was a bad idea. And I will tell you, from I've heard from other people, not Roger, but I've heard from other people in my industry, like, we're in the dead season. Like, this is not where money and contracts are happening, and I'm doing really well as a business owner and with the team, serving clients where the money isn't flowing. That's going to start in a month. So I'm intrigued to see what all this progress and all this process, and removing some of these barriers, and putting my full force into it with a small team is going to get us in the future. So yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, to me, I know you've shared a lot about your experience and how you're navigating this, right? But in general, most people are going to be taking the risk and jumping off the cliff. I think the it's great if you can start it as a side hustle, build up your brand, and do that on the side. But that's not possible for every type of business.
Oh,
For
completely.
those that aren't, the biggest thing I would say is if you are working another job, save, and you should do this anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because a financial investor is going to tell you to have at least 6 months worth of bills in your savings
Yeah.
before you invest in anything else, right? So you should be doing the same thing when you're thinking about a business, because it's just another form of investment. It's just one where you control how much money comes back to you, right?
Yeah.
So you should have at least 6 months where you can float yourself, right?
And
And
I'll tell you that, A, you're right, but B, I got to the point where I could do that through my primary income and my primary work, and that also de-risked a few things for me. Like, the worst case scenario, I had exactly that. Whether it was loss of a job because I choose to, loss of a job because of downsizing, or whatever. That did help with the de-risking it for me personally, and I think it would for other people. People, if you can get to that capacity, and I know not everyone can. I've been there for a very long time, but if you can, Roger, you are 100% right, and that's the reason I interrupted you, because that also can help de-risk. If you want to go off the cliff, but you've already built that up, you at least know what the worst case scenario is, and you have a time to live on whether your business is successful or not.
yeah, and I think a lot of that too is, again, you can offset that with building that capacity for raising capital up front. right? So
Fair.
set that runway up at the very beginning of the business or before you start, but also keep building it while you go, right? So make sure you're doing the things that you need to build business credit, because you don't want to personal guarantee things. So if you can build that business credit right up front, you need to do that so that, within a year, you don't have to personally guarantee things, for your business. So, and there's
And I will
companies, if
say,
anyone's interested,
yeah.
if anyone's interested, just hit me up on LinkedIn or whatever. I've got folks that do that for a living, and I'd be more than happy to share and connect you with them as well.
And just so the viewers again know, if you haven't gotten it yet, I think Roger has some bootstrap companies, but mostly has investors and does a lot of that type of investment. I'm actually not sure if you have any bootstrapped of the many that you're working on. I'm
I have a
100%
couple.
a couple. That's what I thought. Yeah, and I am my ethos and my conversation comes from never wanting to take money. Now, we're not talking about from a bank and like SBA loans, those type of things, or having a credit line because your business is doing so well. That's one thing. I'm talking about going to like an S corp or whatnot, and offering shares and going for venture. Maybe I'll get there. There's one project that might, but I'm trying. I come from the perspective of bootstrapping is great, and if you could bootstrap to a certain capacity and then you want to go out and raise and you've already made a bunch of money, it might be a little bit easier. But that's just my background and ethos and what
It's
I love.
easier. So we're going on a tangent now, but it's easier to raise capital with investors and things once you have a POC, right? And
Yeah,
POC is proof of concept,
yeah,
right? So typically I measure my first year or so of the business when you're dealing with investments with a POC phase and a POS, which means proof of scale, right?
yeah,
So you prove the concept out, and then you prove the scalability of it, right? And it's much easier to go to an investor and say, "Hey, look, we're already successful. We're wanting to dip into the well to grow rapidly." And they're going to want you to spend their money, by the way, just so you
yeah,
know. When an investor gives you money, they don't want you to squirrel it away. They want you to spend it so that you can start growing revenue as quickly as possible. Um,
but
but
but you can do that when you have a strategic plan that you started with, or at least you
Well,
ideated at the
yeah,
beginning,
but for
right?
some, it truly depends on the business. Like, for example, some of the stuff that Josh kind of alluded to, it's a national thing. It's something that we aren't going to wait a year or two or three or whatever till you get to that critical mass where you do that. The vision is, hey, we scale this quickly, we take advantage of the market, and then we get our multiplier. And we've talked about multipliers on the shows before, right? So that's a different model. It's also much meant to be larger scale at the beginning. If you're just doing a restaurant or whatever at the very beginning, then yeah, you bootstrap it. But
Yeah,
if you're doing larger organizations or larger companies that are designed to grow rapidly and are designed to either go public or have an IPO, go public or have an investor buy you out. It's all about growth in a short period of time and um, the multiplier. So it's a
yeah,
different, it's not a cash based process. You can build wealth that way, right? With cash. Um, but there's another way to build wealth, which is through companies, and you do that through investing. And the goal is to either sell that business or go public.
yeah,
And once you go public, then you have the shares, and then you have to wait your SEC minimum a year, or you're still in the company, and then you can sell your shares,
yeah,
right? So again, it's a different model for that.
yes,
So bootstrapping's fine, but you still need to have access to capital when you run into something sideways, so you can still continue to cover your expenses or whatever when something hits you. And then also making sure that you have savings on the side as well, right? So that you can cover your personal expenses, and you don't take a paycheck if you have to pay your team for a month. Those are the things that people who are small business employees when they complain about certain things, they're not thinking about all the times you didn't take a paycheck, or thinking about all the times you took less money than what they're making for the business and to continue to employ them. So again, two separate models. Yes, I do both, but the advice is still the same, right? Make sure you're building your capacity to raise capital, no matter how that is, right? And make sure that you've got at least 6 months squirreled away in your accounts, so that you can float yourself if you need to. All right, so we've been talking a lot about strategic plans. Let's go ahead and pivot. Yeah, where's my pivot? Come on, Josh. There it is. Let's go ahead and pivot to strategic planning. So one of the other challenges people have when they go into a business is they have no plan. They have an idea. They have a bunch of excitement. They have the capability to do whatever it is that they're doing. They have passion, but they have no plan. So, Josh, as what we were talking about earlier, there's a difference between a tactical plan and a strategic plan, right? Yeah. A strategic plan, when we're thinking about this, we're thinking about 2-3 years. So last week, we were talking to someone, Brody, who was talking to us about, exit planning. And part of your strategic plan has to be the exit planning, right? Has to be the exit. Yeah. So you're already thinking ahead. Okay, this is where I'm going to be at 6 months. You've got your P&Ls. This is where I'm going to be at 6 months. This is where I'm going to be at a year. This is where I'm going to be at 2 years. And this is where I'm going to be at 3 years, right? And you should be updating that annually based on where your business is, right? Because we all know, the best laid plans go awry. So, at the end of the day, what it boils down to is, for you need to have a strategic plan. And part of those strategic plan needs to be a people plan. It needs to be a investment plan. It needs to be a cost plan. So in other words, what technology are you going to need? What, other supporting services are you going to need for your employees? When you're small and you have 2 or 3 employees, whether you offer benefits or not, you're not going to have as much sunk cost into your employees and the things to support that. When you get to 50 employees, now you've got things like human resources that you have to worry about, and different rules that you have to worry about. Do you have a legal team? How many, times are you going to have to engage with the lawyer? Because that all costs money. And that's going to depend on what type of business you have. And, it may be different for a tech industry than it would be for a restaurant. But at the same time, you need to be thinking about these things. What threats, going back to a traditional SWOT, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? And what are my threats? Right? So what can I go take advantage of? What are things that I should be worried about? And what's my plan B and C for each one of those threats? Right? That needs to be done on the front end on the strategic plan. But also, you need to strategically plan for your opportunities, right? So what opportunities are going to be there? What if I grow faster than I thought there was going to be? Do I see something happening in my particular industry that I could go take advantage of, right? Because remember, when you're starting a company, you don't have all the challenges of trying to change process, retrain people, change technology, change procedures. You get a fresh start at that moment in time when you're starting your business. So you get to apply the best practices. So it behooves you to do that up front. That doesn't mean do what everybody else has done. Yeah. That means look at it from a clean slate. Look at your P&Ls, see if you can make money on that. If you can make money on that, can you make more money than what other people are doing it in the traditional sense? And then if you are making money and you're doing it better, then lean into that, even if you're not making more than everybody else to begin with, because that's going to create opportunities for you later that you don't have to clean up when the industry pivots, when your clients pivot, when the technology pivots, anything like that. You want the best case scenario for where you're at right now. And that's your strategic plan, and build your goals around that, right? So from a people perspective, you need to have a plan, a process perspective, from a technology perspective, from a capital perspective, from an opportunity perspective, and from a threat perspective, what what ways can you capitalize on that, and how can you build the capital to be able to capitalize it at various times during the growth cycle of that. It also is thinking about, okay, when do you need to introduce HR? What is that cost going to be? If you don't have benefits, when can I introduce those benefits as quickly as possible for my employees? What are those additional costs that are going to be involved in that? And you need to be planning for that upfront, and really be thinking about this before you embark on your business. So that doesn't mean you're not going to have to pivot, but if you've got a plan and you've got something to aspire to, right, because you've set those goals around that plan, then you're going to be much better prepared for moving forward. So Josh, what are your thoughts on that?
So it's interesting because where I come from in the software development business model canvas type of atmosphere and lean startups, no one's starting with a strategic plan. You go and work a business model canvas, see if you find a pain that's a gain a pain that your gain can solve, find product market fit and alignment, and then if you do, you've already talked to your customers. You build, or in the old days, you build a Figma and show not real software and get pre-seed funding, right? So it's interesting because when I went to school at UCF for business, that is what you're supposed to do. When I'm teaching an I-Corps, not teaching, when I'm an I-Corps mentor at UCF, we're not talking about a lot of the stuff. So I do agree. Like right now, I have done a SWOT analysis for a client on opportunities, on all of the places they need some opportunities, and not so much threats, but there's definitely weaknesses and some strengths. But I've done that for others, and I haven't really done it for myself. It's just kind of interesting. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. To me, it depends on the business. Like I do feel like there are a lot of people who are in the software development and try to spin up something fast, try to get that momentum, try to get lists of potential customers, try to onboard customers and get all that, because once you do that well enough, then venture, if you're good enough, will come, if that's the way you're doing things. So I agree that having no strategic plan can definitely be a barrier of entrepreneurship. I do also agree that if you have a strategic plan, where I'm at, right? I mean, going from 0 to maybe 6 figures in less than a year, understanding where I should kind of be now and not having to ideate that, but having it in a plan would be good. Although I don't have it formally, I do have most of it informally, would be helpful. So I agree with you, but I don't practice what I preach. And I probably need to personally do some
Most people
formalization.
don't.
So learn from my mistakes, right?
I mean, most people don't, right? So, I
Yeah.
mean, look at it from, we talk to Alan all the time. That was something that I helped him with, right? Is getting a strategic plan out. I have a giant whiteboard on, as much as I like tech, I have a giant whiteboard and I have all of that mapped out there. And what that does for me is when I'm in the midst of, either a challenging situation or, I'm feel myself getting buried in the details, I go back, take a step back, slide back and look at that and then say, okay, how can I tie what I'm doing today to those goals? Because you have to, it's very easy as an entrepreneur to get caught up in the minutia because you are the chief everything officer, but you have to keep up with, and focus on those larger goals. And by the way, let me take a pause here. Brittany chimed in on the chat. Brittany Leonard, our good friend and amazing person with a great smile. Brittany is we've had her on, and she is, someone who just gets stuff done.
Yes.
Like that. That's just who she is, right? And she by popular demand, she had the I think it was I don't know, what was it, the 12 rules?
Unwritten rules.
Unwritten rules. That's what it was. Her unwritten rules. People were asking for them in an ebook, And she was like, I didn't think people would find value in it. And she went out and did it, right?
Yes,
That's
that's
an
true.
opportunity, right?
Mhm.
But Brittany knows what she wants to do and she's working towards certain things, but she took advantage of that opportunity and she left herself the ability to be able to do that. And she just did it. So
Yeah.
make sure you're checking out Brittany Leonard on LinkedIn and everywhere else that she is,
Yeah.
Instagram. You can now watch her in cars, but she's doing car talk. So when she
Oh,
does
nice.
car business talk in interesting cars, then I'm going to have to do a segment with her. So if we're doing a burnout while she's doing her car talk,
Okay.
you should definitely tune in.
This,
But
this must be on something I'm not following. So, Brittany, in post, you should let me know what's going on there.
so at
Well,
the end of the day, my point though is
yeah,
go ahead and check out Brittany's LinkedIn and her Instagram to go check out her ebook, Unwritten Rules, support fellow UCF alum,
yes,
and an all around great person with that a lot of people
yeah.
can learn from.
And I will tell you, let's just use that as an example of what we're talking about here. A barrier is the lack of risk taking capacity. That's something, if you follow Brittany or you watched our discussion with her earlier. That's something like she's built a bit of a brand over for 5 years, right? But she didn't have let me put this in a better way. She didn't know that people might buy an ebook, right? She didn't know that people might watch some videos or mini trainings and things like that and be part of a community, right? And it took a while to build it up and go, oh, and have that light bulb moment. So sometimes when you prepare, when you just do things that are genuine and authentic, there that really can both build communities and can lead you to other avenues of entrepreneurship. I don't think the unwritten rules was her initial idea of like, this is how I'm going to provide some things to the community that I'm building or the people who are asking for these things. But it kind of just came from everything I'm reading. So that's why I'm saying but you have to do something to get to the point where you can take that risk. And she's
You
done
have
that
to
well.
be able to, again, this goes back to the time capacity and being able to, have the capacity and time to be able to have that opportunity to take advantage of it when it
Yes.
comes along. And that's why you need, whether it be that capital, whether it's an acquisition of another company or, an acquisition of technology or an acquisition of an individual personal, a people resource, right? That
Yeah.
you never thought would be available to you because they're happily at the whatever place they're at, but they're a rock star and they can help you grow. You need to have that time capacity and you need to have that capital capacity to be able to take advantage of those opportunities or pivot to address those threats.
You're right. You're right. And that is the, you can, I wouldn't say you fall into it, but you can work hard in building your own business in lots of different ways. It doesn't matter if it's a physical business like a restaurant, something I've worked in for over a decade, so I'm very familiar with those areas, or something virtual like the things that some of us are building. Roger and I both have things that are virtual and in person. So yeah, but it doesn't just happen poof, right? You either have to have a good idea, you have to build off it, you have to build a community. You can join up with other people that have good ideas and work as a team, but you of the things we're going to talk about, one of the barriers that we're just not even talking about is actually taking action. Like giving yourself the capacity, right, to take an action that it might be risky but might have a great reward. We're not talking about too much of that, but some people need that permission. Like, yes, you can build your own business, right? Some people just need to hear that, and that sometimes just that permission internally or told by someone else who's done it, Roger more than me, right, is something that might lift the barrier for you too.
All right. Speaking of capacity and building capacity, right? Let's talk about the next one on the list. Issues with human resources.
And
The
yeah,
bane of every business's existence, right? However, human resources, if you've hired the right person, is there honestly to protect the business, right?
yes,
Yes, they should be helping you with and informing the individuals of their rights, thereby taking you out of that conversation, right? And making sure that you're adhering to the legal standards. It also helps prepare you for things when you're writing procedures or, making sure you have the right processes in place, the right signage up, the right hiring practices, making sure that you're consistent in your interviewing, taking hopefully some of that hiring. You've gotten to the point where you can allow that person to do that for you. So at the end of the day, issues with human resources is a huge thing. There is a transition. A lot of startups, when they're small, have a certain culture that, I don't know how to say this properly because I'm not saying that this is a good thing, but at the same time, it's a culture driven by a small group of people who've gone through a lot of difficult things, and they may be more friendly as well as professional, right? So some of the things that they talk about, some of the jokes that they make, may be different than what you get as you kind of grow, right? And I'm not saying they're right, right? However, the truth is there are less protections in place for people, and there are less regulations for businesses under 50, right? So two parts to this. One, you don't make that pivot and understand that when you start hiring people, you cannot behave the same way with each other as you would otherwise, because it's not just about what you say to somebody or do around somebody. It's also what they see or hear.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a distinction. You may not be directing something at someone, but if someone hears something or sees something that both parties are comfortable with, but this person is not, that still creates a problem for you.
Yeah. You've been through some training, it sounds like.
I think everybody has, right?
I think at this point, yes. But that's part of it. I mean, understanding that, and it's not even you. It's like you could be in the room and there are third-party vendors that are helping and working, and if they see or hear something, that could be an issue too. Yeah, I wouldn't say I've worked a lot in HR, but the HR directors have always been very friendly with me at a director or C-suite level. So I've heard some things and I've seen some things. So I've learned what not to do for a while.
Well, hopefully not too friendly, Josh. That being said,
no, not in that way.
No, but at the end of the day, what it boils down to is like you need to be aware of that up front. And the more you grow, the more visibility you have, and you have responsibilities, right? And you have, from a cultural perspective, building a culture and what's permissible at your organization. That's hugely important. Yeah. Once you start bringing HR in, it's also important to set the right tone for your HR business partner or HR VP or whatever they are, right? Chief People Officer, whatever they're calling themselves. You need to make sure that you're having a conversation with that individual that they are not there to listen to every complaint that someone has. Okay?
Yeah.
When they're dealing with something and an individual has a challenge or something that they need to work through, they should be working through their management team first. And your HR business partners should be training your management team to be able to handle those situations appropriately, right? Before they get into an HR situation, right? Once they go to your HR business partner, if they can't handle it or they're uncomfortable or they don't go through the chain of command before they get to them, or if it's something extremely, inappropriate or heinous or whatever, if someone is, sexually harassing someone consistently or, just, hanging their head over their job or a promotion for favors, or they're creating an environment where they're talking down to people and they're not comfortable going to the next level, then fine. But I've seen this too, where some HR business partners come in and they want to be everybody's friend. So they actively encourage them to come to their office, and then they talk about every gripe, whether it's real or not, right? And then there's an onus on there. You have to then do something about it, whether it's legitimate or not, right? And the HR business partner has to do something about it. So the first step always should be going to the leader, unless it's something over the top, right? If someone's threatening someone or whatever, by all means. But you have to find that right balance, because once you let that genie out of the bottle, people are going to continuously do that. Now, once you hit that 50, there's a different set of rules that you have to abide by. When you hit 100 employees, there's even more rules that you have to abide by. And there's also a lot more, how should I say this? A lot more risk or exposure as well. So you need to make sure you're tightened up at each one of those steps, and make sure before you hit 50 and before you hit 100, have an HR business, at least before you hit 100, have an HR business partner, right? And make sure that's in your plan. Make sure you work together with them to set the tone, and because they are there to protect the business and the company as much as they are there to protect the individual's rights. And by that means making sure that you're handling things appropriately so a lawsuit doesn't come in on the back end. Making sure things are documented properly, right? Because that can sink your business. You should also, by the way, have insurance for that, right? Yes. And if you wrote your corporate docs appropriately, then you've got indemnification in there for you, as long as you didn't do anything.
Where's Brittany? She's been on indemnification all week.
Oh, has she?
Yeah, she has I think she has an entire section of one of her things in her vault on that, or at least she will in future. But you're right, and I will say from my experiences, both in and as a business owner and as a C-suite, policies, procedures, get those things done before you get too big. Right. Make sure people are actually adhering to them, that they've signed off on them.
It's much easier to do when they're small than it is when you're large, because at that point you've already okayed the bad behavior. So change the behavior while your organization is small, set the tone when it's small, so that as people come into that culture, you don't have to change the behavior with more people.
And I will say, having all of your ducks in a row with HR is really easier if you have an HRIS system, and there's enough of them that are not so over the top expensive that you can get that done, which will help you with your onboarding, your offboarding, your policies. When a change is made to a policy and it's submitted to everyone, they have to sign in and agree to it before, like all those things that you might need to set up for, legal at the end of the day, or internal issues. I've been in organizations over 200 people who didn't have an HRIS system, and I don't know how. And they were still paper, and it was just not good. As a technologist, it behooves you put that in your strategic plan. If you get to the point where you have like 50 people, you're right. Have someone who is the chief people officer or that proper designation, and give them the tools they need to succeed, which is more than just SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Workspace. Like, actually put that into your plans. As someone who's implemented about 4 or 5 of them, it blows my mind how companies get that big without doing something like that.
Yeah, it just makes it a lot faster in the onboarding process, a lot better and easier if you do run into a problem, right? And it also keeps your managers consistent, right?
Yeah.
So, as you bring more people in, and if you're growing rapidly, it's a lot to keep up with on your own. So even if you don't have 50 employees, but you are growing by, 3 employees a month, with everything else you've got going on, that HRIS will automate a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of those processes for onboarding, making sure you're checking their ability to work, running them through the proper systems, housing the documentation that you need to house.
Yeah.
All of that stuff is automated. So that'll make sure you're consistent. It'll store it for you and make sure that you're not missing steps as you're onboarding somebody while you're doing all the rest of the things that you do every day.
Yeah.
So 100% agree with that. Okay. Last thing, little or no marketing experience. Well, would I have something to say about that?
I'd hope so. But you
Yeah,
don't have little to no marketing experience. So
I don't, but I help a lot of people that don't. So one of the
that's
things
fair.
we do is small businesses, right? So I was actually talking to somebody today. It's a perfect example of this. He has an apparel shop. It's his own apparel, right?
Okay.
He's set it up on the side. He's got a day job and he's looking to grow it. So he's in this weird stage where he's got it. He's got some sales going on. It's going to be an e-commerce store.
Yeah.
But and he's trying to do some of this stuff by himself. So what he ended up doing was he went out and spent $1,000 on ads, right?
Mm.
And basically spent them the worst possible way that he could. Got his Facebook locked up, right?
Oh,
Yeah, so
whoa.
it was a whole thing, right? So
Jeez.
that took time, and anytime you get your account unlocked, it's like through Facebook, it's like multiple days, blah blah blah, all that fun stuff, right? And so he's throwing money at stuff, which is great. However, if you're not doing it the right way or don't understand keywords or don't understand, apparel is a very congested market for keywords. So if you're throwing your money at something where other people are throwing a lot more money at it,
Mhm.
guess where your ads end up? At the bottom of the exactly.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, right? The other thing is understanding if you're working with a marketing company, make sure you're working with an agency versus just a company that's only doing one thing, right? Because they
Yeah.
don't care if this is the best thing for you. They're just there to sell that particular product for you. What an agency should be doing is coming up with a plan for you based on where your budget is and then growing that with you,
Yeah.
right? So when you're going out there, one, from a time capacity perspective, it makes sense to pay somebody. From a perspective of the efficacy of your money, right? If you're throwing money at stuff but it isn't doing anything for you, then it is more costly than if you went and partnered with someone who can work with you, give you a glide path, and help you grow. Like I put together a 3, 6, and 9 month plan for him today, right? And I don't do that for everybody. I've got a team of people that does that, but specific people that I meet along the way, I will help them out and really spend time with them to help them grow their businesses. So a lot of small business owners will hear terms, but they don't know how to execute on them effectively, or they'll pay somebody who's just doing something and they think that this is, because it's a buzzword that they need to be spending money on it, but really they aren't ready for that. They should be spending money on something else, right? So, when it comes to all of that stuff, it's important that you partner with someone that can help build a path for you based on where you are and build towards that future that you want to be at. If you have little or no marketing experience, you're limiting your sales. If you're limiting your sales, you're limiting your cash flow and you're going to run out of cash really quickly. So this is an important aspect of it, is understanding how to market, what tools to utilize, and when to engage them at what levels of your budget. And if you don't have a partner that's helping you do that, right, on your schedule with your budget and working your way up to success together, then you really need to be looking for a different partner. So always ask those questions. Find out, what specific things are. Ask them how it's going to make you money. Don't talk about, okay, I'm going to get you so many views. How much revenue are we going to be pulling in off of this? Josh, are you having a conversation? Because I see a lot of smiles and smirks going on while.
No, I'm not having a conversation. It's just a lot of interesting things going on, and it's you helping others with this experience is wonderful, right? I will say not everyone has a you. And to me,
But if they're listening, they
if they
could have a me.
would, right? Yes, 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 yes. But look at that. I just laid it up right there for you. Look at that. 7 lights marketing. 7 lights, right? I think that agency or something.
So
Did I
yeah,
get it?
you're putting all the pieces together.
Wow. Wow.
7lights-agency.com.
Got it. Got it. 7lights-agency.com. Well, here, let me back it up a bit but when I started, I didn't really hang out with Roger a lot, right? And I will tell you this: this is lived experience in the year 2023. You can build a business without marketing experience, but you have to hustle hard. You have to research. You have to learn, and then you need to steal from people. Not literally, but gather their information. Let me give you an example. All right, now I have a OneNote. And when I was starting out, I probably should just curate this and put this out at some point. When I was starting, I gathered as much information as I could because I didn't have a Roger, right? And I have this document of I'm trying to pull it up now of all the sales notes is what it's called, and it's not all sales. And we're talking, if you know OneNote, everything can have like a tab or a line. I'm about 25 to 30 pages deep. And some of the things, and some of this is business development, not quite marketing. Business development and marketing, not the same thing. But when you're starting or you're trying to be an entrepreneur, these things are going to happen. Like I have classifications like intro emails, cold outreach, cold emails, closers, pipeline staging, pricing, LinkedIn strategies, um, urgency, how to deal with missed appointments, and and it goes on and on and on and on. And the reason I say that is that I curated and crafted my own persona, if you will, based off how I put out to the market the things I'm thinking about and doing, based off of the things that I cobbled together within a month or two of building, right? And being my own business. And it only is a barrier to entrepreneurship if you don't either get a resource like a Roger or someone else like that and learn from them, or you do a lot of reading, which I did. I read a ton of books, and you do a lot of LinkedIn and other social. You can see this stuff probably on TikTok at this point.
And I'll add a qualifier to that
Sure.
too. Technical prowess.
That's fair. I mean, that's never been a barrier for me, but it can be a barrier for a lot of people who might be watching right now or listening later, right? You can even get skilled up on the tech side. Hey, you can reach out to me on that one. And Roger has some insights on that too on certain areas. But a lot of this, and this is what I told my students tonight. We're live. I'm teaching at UCF. I told my students learning, absorbing, and practice is the best way to overcome, in that case, presentation anxiety and some other things that we're talking about to get better at presentations. If marketing and getting out to your market or doing business development is a barrier for you, research, practice, and putting yourself out there can help. Now, obviously, you just pay someone and they can help you too, but you might not have that funding already up front. But if you do have a good idea and you have investors already investing in you, that's when you hire like a Roger, right? Or someone to spend that money, because Roger's right. If investors give you money, they want you to spend it, and this is the stuff they want you to spend it on. So you you might want to spend it on other things too. It's not your whole budget, but take a piece and market get the market driven to your product. Understand who are your customer personas and make sure they're getting their eyeballs or their attention to what you're trying to solve for them, because the whole goal of business is to make someone's life easier, typically solve a pain with a gain that you or your business can provide. So it is a barrier if you do nothing, but it can be an accelerant if you do some of the things we talked about today.
Yeah, I would say to that though, if someone's got like 6 months or whatever that they're running into a business, you don't have a very uh long time to bone up and figure this stuff out,
Oh,
right?
I did
So
it within a month.
yeah,
I'm with you.
you
I'm with you.
did. You did, Josh,
Yes.
right? But not everybody has that, right? So
Oh,
you're
sure.
doing all the other things that you're doing too. So my point is just be cognizant of the fact that if you're going to start spending money on that, like if you have an e-commerce store and do ads and all that stuff, you know, understanding what tools to use, how to research your keywords, how do you benchmark against others, what ads are going to make the most sense for you? Do you know how to use Google My Business? Do you know how to use Google Ads? Learning all of that while you're trying to spin up a business. If you're going to try to learn it, I would
Yeah.
suggest you do it beforehand, especially if it's
Yeah.
your full-time job, because it's one thing, even for me, like I can code HTML and CSS, and I've got some C++ and Java from back in the day. But even for me, going back into a website and going back and coding something or figuring that out, or understanding what's accessible and what's not accessible, etc. Um, there's a lot involved with that. If you don't have the time, or if you're throwing money at advertising, right? Because there's a difference between advertising and marketing, and
Yeah.
there's a difference between marketing, advertising, and branding. Those are three different disciplines. A
Yes.
lot of people don't think of it that way, right? Um, but the point is, you need to make sure that that you know what you're doing before you start spending money if you're going to do it yourself. And the
Yeah.
only way to do that is to try. But even if you look it up, you're not going to be able to do all of these other things and just see that. There's not a book that tells you, okay, this is what you do with keyword. It'll show you, hey, this is how I look at my Google ads, and these are the keywords that are out there. And there are some tools that are out there that are built into Google, but there's some very specific things. So it's about going forward faster. So if you don't have the
Yeah.
time or the runway, right, to do it yourself, or you don't have the technical prowess, I'd recommend, because it's a lot, I would recommend talking to someone, because again, that's time that you're not doing the other things that you need to grow.
Yeah. And that's the
So
and everyone has something they're willing to substitute their money for time in doing. For me, right now, it's a little bit of the admin stuff, and I kind of like doing my own books. I probably shouldn't. I'll probably do that too. But if this is also something you don't love doing and you have funding for that, spend it. Just get it out of your ethos and focus on what your core disciplines are.
yeah, 18 to 20%, folks, for a growing business. If you want to rapidly scale, it should be 18 to 20% of your budget at any given time. Now, if your budget's only $2,000, that's fine, right? It's making sure that you know where you need to throw that at,
Yeah.
as well, which is also something that you should be talking to someone else about, whether it be a marketer or whether it be someone in marketing who's in your network. So,
Yeah.
all right, we're at 108 officially, Josh. Just a quick reminder for everybody: if you do need help with small business lending, mid-sized lending, or large business lending, we do have a partner that I work with called Rock Finance. The information is in the description below. I'd be more than happy to walk you through that. Um, we still have UCF, or I'm sorry, Golden Knights Club.com out there for you guys to utilize. And so make sure that you're including your business and then what you're looking for, because we're aggregating UCF's alumni to use each other. And then, Josh, where can people find you?
So the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. That's where you might be watching this live too. You can find me on LinkedIn to have contact on anything really technology related. Our focuses are on software development internally and for others. So if you're looking for software development resources or you're looking for software to be built, come to me. Let's have a discussion. It would be we're getting a few more of those over the last couple of weeks. One just came in today of like, hey, can you connect this API and have people pay for something through Stripe and have it connected. Yeah, A, we can. B, hopefully you have a statement, a scope of work, and we can talk about and a good budget. So we're doing a lot of that work, and our core services are in technological and operational assessments, trying to make sure that your technology is working for you and your organization, and that it's aligned with your operations. So we're working with COOs, CIOs, and trying to make all of your lives easier. You can reach out to me at josh@techthinktank.com. Techthinktank.com is the website, and I'd love to help anyone who has those needs.
All right, awesome. And for all of your marketing needs in small business, legal, medical, and higher education, video production, and VR. So we're doing VR now, which is pretty cool. So 3D animation and VR. You can reach me at r.phipps at 7lights-agency.com or visit our website, as Josh mentioned earlier, 7lights-agency.com. Or for any of your consulting needs, you can reach me at bossleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. Or if you need help with that, with the lending that I talked about earlier, you can also reach me at bossleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. That's it for this week, folks. Thank you for joining us again. We see you guys out there. Thank you, Brittany, for stopping by. Make sure you're checking out her stuff and her unwritten rules. We're super proud of her for doing that. And, to all those nights out there, when I'm reaching out to you on LinkedIn, Roger Phipps MBA, I'm not trying to sell you something. I'm just trying to spread awareness and broaden my connection. So if you see a message from me, that's what I'm trying to do. Thank you so much. Looking forward to next week. Remember to like, subscribe, and grind. Go Knights.
Charge on. And